everybody, it's Christy back with another interview. Today I have Nettie Long Poetry with me, so I'm going to bring her out to meet you guys.
Hello.
How you doing? Hi, thanks for your time. I appreciate you coming on and doing an interview with us.
It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So I like to start out by giving you the floor for a minute to kind of tell us about you and what your mental health journey has been.
Well, I am a survivor of sexual childhood abuse and also domestic violence. My journey started when I was really young. Through this abuse, I was 3 all the way up into age about 6 or 7, and it was with a female cousin of mine, and really nothing was really done about it except for we just stopped associating ourselves with that side of the family. So I really didn't get rehabilitated, and the what I talk about now in my poetry are all the intricate feelings that I was dealing with because I wasn't being violently abused. I was confused in thinking that it was good for me, right? And
Right.
so a lot of abuse victims won't even acknowledge or even talk about such things because it does make people feel dirty. Um, I didn't. I was trying to kind of reenact how to get those feelings again, and those were very troubling things I would have to deal with as a child by myself because I didn't even have a connection with my parents to even talk about such things. I'm kind of on the older spectrum. I'm 46, so back then we just really didn't hear anything about having therapy or being rehabilitated. But that was part of my issues, just not being rehabilitated. And then it turned around and it happened. A molestation happened again, but by a pastor. And so I was 12 years old, but at that point I had a little sense knowing that this wasn't right. And I didn't hold it for several years. I held it for a few months, but then I ended up exposing it. And that was devastation in itself and trauma in itself after that. I feel I lost my self identity, right? Because at that point I started to become a people pleaser, and that was more important to me. Being liked, I didn't realize that I would create such anxiety, given all of those circumstances, still not being rehabilitated even the second time. I was asked if I wanted to speak to a counselor about it by my parents, but then I was like, I don't ever want to speak about this again. So they kind of like left it in my lap to deal with it, even though I'm 12, I don't know any better. And so the part that I play in advocacy is holding parents responsible about rehabilitating their children when they've been exposed to sexual trauma. It's so very important because you don't want to lose your child to behaviors, and so that was very important to me. Parenting the right way, using the our community our communities are set up for help, so a lot of people don't know that. And so that's kind of like from there, when you get into adulthood, when you don't get rehabilitated, now you lose a self of identity. Now you're people pleasing, so now you're more vulnerable in being in a domestic violence relationship. There are people out there have the trained eye to know who they can manipulate. And I would have to admit that a lot of my relationships, I was very manipulated. And so you have to get to a point in time in life where the choices that we choose for ourselves and the people that we keep company, and we have to put a stop to it. And you have to choose that. That's not something that, somebody can help you. I mean, people can help you through helping you see what you don't see. But the real power is holding yourself accountable for the choices that we make.
That is a really powerful story, and I'm so sorry you went through that, because not having that kind of closure,
Right.
even for either, is really hard, especially at such a young age, because you're trained to believe like You don't need it. It's not something that's necessary. Not realizing the behaviors that we take into our adult lives when we lose our sense of identity like that,
Yeah.
especially more than once, you know, and you
More
are
than once.
both
Yeah.
ages are like prime for kind of discovering who you are as a person and starting to, you know, especially number one as a child, and then number two is like a young adult, you're starting to go through puberty right after that. That's
Right.
where we kind of really learn to deal with our emotions and what they are, and our parents are supposed to guide us through that. And
Yes.
on top of not even having an identity, now there's like that sense of not hatred but hurt, you
I
know,
I
because the
did
people.
hate. I hated myself. And the reason why I hated myself, I hated
Oh, you kind of
myself.
kind of
No.
lagged out for a second.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there was a call trying to come in. I was trying to stop it.
Okay.
Um, the reason I hated myself was because in all of those abuse situations I was in, I was always told how beautiful I was. And so now I'm thinking to myself, this is being beautiful isn't all what it's cracked up to be. I don't want to be beautiful. So then there was a point in my life I wanted to dress like a boy. You know what I mean? I didn't want to attract any type of unmerited or unwanted, you know, you know, just any interaction in that way whatsoever. I didn't want to be sexualized. And I realize even now in this industry and even at the age that I'm at right now, I'm constantly being over sexualized. And it's like there's no escaping it. So I so this is what I struggle with even today. Sometimes it's not, my I thank God he's created me, and I I appreciate the cup that I've been given, but it took me a very long time to get where I am at, and the healing process and the journey, even though it was hard. And this is what I tell people who are struggling with their healing process, is that no matter what, you still have to choose you. You know what I mean? You still have to
Absolutely.
choose yourself. And that's the part a lot of people struggle with, because they get what they mix up is, oh, well, I have a family I have to look out for. And so did I. I had 7 children. And I had grandkids that I was helping taking care of. So your life doesn't stop, but you do have to choose you. And then I got to a point where I'm not going to go into another relationship, right? I'm choosing not to go into another relationship. And I didn't for several years. I'm talking at least like 5 or 6 years before I started to date again. Because I didn't trust myself. I had to choose to recognize the impact that I was making in my own life with my choices. So I don't know if I'm making if I'm making any sense here, but
You
that's what
are. You're
I
making.
feel like I had to do, because the battle is within myself, right? And everybody talks about how the battle is mentally in our mind, and it's the truth. That part is the truth. So mentally you have to kind of like war with yourself. And I have a poetry piece called Infinity Wars, because it's a constant battle, and infinity is a never ending circle of just that. And so yeah, that's just a little bit about me and my advocacy and what, it's sometimes it seems a little harsh, because okay, it forces us to have to look at ourselves,
Right.
and part of your journey when you're healing is always taking accountability for yourself.
Right. And it's I like to say it's a fight between habits,
That's
because we
true.
develop these habits when we come
Right.
from abuse, because I also come from abuse.
Mm.
um, and it's a struggle because number one, especially like you said, you had to take a break from dating because the habits and the behaviors and the person that you think you are is really just a result of what happened to you and not getting that kind of healing that you needed. So then you turn inward to say, like, no, that's a behavior. That's not who I
Mhm.
am. I don't like behaving that way. Or
Mhm.
that feature in a man to be very controlling in the relationship, that just stems from my abuse. That's not what I want in a husband, you know?
Mhm.
So it's a hard, long journey trying to find out exactly who you are to fully love
Whew.
yourself before you can even find somebody to love you, because otherwise you're just finding somebody to deal with you, right? And
Yeah.
that's not the same as love.
Mm-mm.
So it's a constant struggle. I'm
So
31 and I'm still like, I'm not ready to date yet because I'm still kind of a mess over here, you
right.
know?
We'll bleed on each other if we'll bleed on the people that we actually care about. Like in my instances, I was bleeding all over my kids. You know what I mean? My frustrations, you know what I mean, didn't warrant the punishment that I might have given them. I might have been, over the top, and I've had to track back and had to apologize to them. And even though they all understood, thank goodness they didn't, and a lot of, none of them held it against me, but I saw it, but I didn't see it until I started getting therapy.
Right.
Right. I
And
didn't. Yeah.
you know
So
what? Something you said, I just want to commend you for, because you apologize to your children. Do you
I
know
had
many of us
to.
are out here still waiting for that apology that ain't coming?
Ooh, I know. And see, again, I feel like I'm like this mother when I'm out like performing and things like that, because those are hard truths that we have to face. We do have to face them, even as parents, because we're doing what we've been taught. And the thing is, the things that we complained about when we were children, it's like we already knew not to behave that way, but we still did it because that's what we knew, right? And we did
Right.
nothing. And so as parents, there's no manual, right,
At
to
all.
being a parent, but you know what you know, right? And I knew that I didn't want to be a screamer, right? Even though my parents were a screamer, right? But I turned around and ended up being a screamer because I chose not to be better, right? So
Right.
everything's a choice. I feel as though I know that I also have a broadcast that I do live on Facebook. It's called "They Took My Choice Away," and I'm on there. I'm interviewing survivors of either domestic violence or sexual childhood abuse, and but they're all and they're all thriving and they're all healing. And I just wanted to have that open floor for people and survivors to express themselves, to be relatable to people out there that have dealt with such things and how they're striving today, and the steps that they took. So that it's not just one example, me, it's several. And I'm in my second season. I'm almost complete my second year. So I'm really excited. And I'll be doing a podcast. And that's going to be the continuation of They Took My Choice Away.
And that's a beautiful thing you're doing. So tell us where we can find that so that we can watch it.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. I do the Facebook Lives once a month. I've got one coming up December the 11th. And my name is just Nettie Long, just the way it's spelled right there. And I check y'all backgrounds though. If I don't like what you guys are posting, I don't accept you as friends. But just know that. And then but yeah, I usually accept just about everybody.
And you said it was December 11th, right?
December 11th is the next episode. Yep.
Just pop that down there so people can see it. Because it's important to give people that floor. And
yeah.
that I think is what's the most powerful thing when it comes to mental health, is to showing that there is support out there. It's the reason that I do these interviews. It's the reason that you do what you do, because
Right.
I know for myself for a long time, I felt alone. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
nobody who went through what I went through. And that's not true.
It's not true.
And unfortunately, in a lot of the cases, we don't get the apology that we're desperately seeking. And we spend most of our lives waiting for that hero to pop in. And that hero is usually supposed to be our parents. And sometimes it's not quite Disney over here. It's not quite how things pan out. So it's learning to deal with those hurt feelings on top of everything else you're feeling. And like you said, you kind of bleed on everybody else, on our children, on our friends, on our families, and really healing and moving forward and holding yourself accountable, like you said, is most important, I feel like, when it comes to these kinds of things, because otherwise it just continues.
Well, it's the first step. Sorry, I apologize.
It's okay.
I think it's the first step, the accountability part, just recognizing that you need to help. And then just really understanding that it's going to be a long journey, and most people do need someone to help them through their thoughts, because the trauma that I endured with a narcissist, there was a lot of damage that needed to be undone. And there was a lot of things about myself that I thought I deserved this, and part of the reason why I stayed is because I didn't want to be alone. you know at a young age, my father abandoned us as a family. So that played such a significant role in why I stayed in relationships that I shouldn't have stayed, because I didn't want to feel that loneliness. I didn't want to feel like i I wasn't wanted. So it's like, again, that part, when you lose pieces of yourself, um it plays tricks on your mind, thinking that you deserve things that you don't.
That's very true. And it's hard too with those abandonment and those feelings of rejection. It's hard to move into your adult life and relationships because you're like, I don't want to feel rejected. So you'll take whatever you can get that won't reject you. But usually that whatever you can take is the people who are the worst possible people for you.
Exactly.
So that's the hardest part too. And that comes a lot, it stems a lot with not just your identity, but your self-esteem,
Right.
rebuilding that, from those hurt feelings. It takes a long time to rebuild that. But unfortunately, it's called self-esteem and nobody can build it for us but us, right?
And that's the choice.
That's right. And if it takes doing what I do, I look in the mirror every day and I go, hard 7 out of 10, girl. Hard
Yes.
7 out of 10. Just to be humble, because 10 out of 10's conceited.
Mm.
But it's feeling like a 10 out of 10, but just settling for at least a 7 out of 10. Just every single
Hmm.
day to yourself in the mirror helps. It goes a long way with
It
positive self-talk.
does.
Yeah.
It really does. I think the kind of company that you keep, you want good friends that will tell you the truth, but also will also encourage you through. And if you don't have those, then get yourself some new ones.
That's
Um,
right.
and or I think for me, um, writing was the coping mechanism that I had, that my therapist kept pushing me to do. And I didn't become a poet just, overnight, right? It was through therapy, and she kept telling me, like, just write a letter. Just write a letter. And I'm like, I can't, how am I going to write something I can barely muster up words to say with what I've been through? At this point, when I needed a therapist, it really wasn't for the traumas that I had earlier in my life. It was a marital trauma that I had. And with, with that being said, that was supposed to take me out. I was supposed to, like, literally, it left me in shambles, and I wanted to kill myself, which is, and then in therapy, and I did many years of it, and with the same therapist, thank God we connected. She was exactly what we needed as a whole family. um so with that being said, she was dedicated to us, assigned to us for several years, and so she felt that we were good,
Yeah.
but it was her pushing me to write, and I couldn't. The phone calls just keep coming in. I don't know how to stop it. I apologize.
It's okay.
um so I wrote, let me go back. I wrote my first poetry piece. It just came out poetically. It just came out that way, and I didn't know that was hidden inside of me when I finally did open up. And then that opened up the doors for other poetry, for other poems. That first poem ended up being, my first poem I would recite at a women's conference. And that's kind of like how it put me on the map to start doing events with churches and also events outside. And then I became, I don't know, I'm not a renowned,
Yet. Yet.
yet. However, I'm working towards that. And so I get bookings, but that only came from healing and being able to talk about, the journey that it took for me to get here. And then I had to expose some things. I had to be comfortable in exposing those things, you know? So you don't get here overnight. You're looking at somebody that's been doing this for 9 years, right? but I've only been performing in the last 7. So it took some years to get where I'm at.
Right. And you know what? It just goes to show that it doesn't matter what it is. Healing is linear. It's not linear. It can happen anytime. You could feel great today and you break down tomorrow. But things like writing, I do it too, are so
Mhm.
important, because not only does it put it on paper for you to really look at what happened, but it helps you kind of untangle all those knots in here for
Yeah.
yourself.
Come
You know,
on, girl.
aside from therapy, they're there to encourage you and to tell you how strong you are and to remind you that you're like a badass and, all those things. But writing it yourself and taking that time alone it's really what drives that therapy home for yourself, and really what
Yes.
helps you untangle and deal and cope and look at it. It
It's the
forces you to look
release.
at what happened, you
Yes.
know? So,
Yes.
because that's kind of what happened for me for my trauma narrative, sitting down and really writing it out. Like, this is what happened. There's no
Yeah.
sugarcoating it. There's
Right.
no fantasizing,
Woo.
daydreaming,
Talk
adding
about
little beautiful pieces to it. No, this is
Mhm.
exactly cut and dry, raw form what happened. You
Yes.
know, really helps you untangle some of those knots.
It really does. It really does.
Yeah. So healing is
True.
ugly, really ugly.
It is. I don't think I ever kind of like correlated that, but yeah, it is. It is ugly. It's like the ocean, right? It's both beautiful and also destructive, right?
Very much
And
so.
that
Yeah.
and that's I guess that's why people love the water so much. And they don't even realize it that it's just
You know what? You might be right. I always look at it like an ugly twin, where
Mhm.
like you spend so much time trying to pretty up the ugly twin, when in reality you should just
Yeah.
accept it for how ugly it is and
Yeah.
move forward like that, because
Yes.
it's a twin, it's the other part of you, the
Mhm.
ugly one.
Mhm.
And instead of looking at the moles like, ew, gross, you gotta love them
Right.
for that, because that's what makes it individual, what makes that them. So
Exactly.
I don't know, there's a poem in there somewhere. I know it.
Yeah. Yes.
So, with that being said, for the last couple minutes, I usually like to drop out, kind of give you the floor for a minute to give a word of
Okay.
encouragement to someone who might be listening. And then I'll close it up from there and we'll be all done.
Oh, okay. Wow. I think I've pretty much said all the things that I would want to say. I think that if you are struggling with depression, if you are struggling with your past, in your youth, if you have been a victim of molestation or a victim of domestic violence, um, that it's very important for you to, first of all, be safe, and find find the help that you need. And sometimes you can find that in confiding in a close friend, a close family member, somebody that you look up to, that you admire, that you respect, and then really just deciding to choose you. That's my message today. It's really just to choose you. No one is going to be able to do or help heal the parts that are very necessary to be healed unless you choose to do that. And I believe that there is help for you. If you're listening today, you're tuning in today, get connected with some resources that'll help you through your journey of healing. I know that God is with you, and He will be there when you decide where you want to end up being. And I believe healing belongs to everyone.
Beautifully said. And thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us your words of wisdom. There's really powerful stuff in here. So I really thank you for that.
No problem.
Right.
Thank
And
you very much.
of course, I'm going to give my final word. I'll be right back.
All right.
So, with that being said, powerful stuff here. Very important words being mentioned, one of which, as you all know, is one of my favorites: accountability. If you stay in the same behaviors and the same lifestyle that you have, and you don't heal from things that you need to, you're never going to fully be fulfilled or happy with your life, because these are just habits and behaviors. We don't like to do things that make us uncomfortable, but those are the most important things to do, because those are what help us grow. Growth is ugly, healing is ugly, and it is not linear, but you have to take that first step. Do it for you, because you're worth it. So with that being said, my name's Christy, and this has been another Mentally Kill interview. And make sure you add Nettie Long on Facebook and tune into her December 11th show. I know I'll be there. So see you on the next one.